So, this is the beginning of a new video series, or I should say a presentation series, that I'd like to call Biochemistry Abridged. So, a little bit about me in terms of my scientific background. So, I studied at the University of Birmingham, and I have a biochemistry degree, and I also have a master's in biotechnology. And I've taken some of the skills from these degrees, and including time in and outside of university, I have spent some time working as an online tutor specifically for biology. And my main connection with YouTube in terms of my biochemistry stuff is some animations I made on YouTube. So this brings me on to why I'm making this little series. Now, this is some of the data from the animations blown up a bit. And I hope what's clear is that one animation in particular has proven quite popular, which still baffles me kind of to this day. And I've tried to make a few others, although they haven't been as popular. So what I'm pointing at here is that there is a subscriber base which I've got, which I'm very grateful for, which I believe has an interest in these videos on biology, molecular biology, biochemistry, etc. But also I wanted to make something which also brings in people who might not have an understanding of this particular subject. And I think it would be a nice way to share my knowledge on the subject, particularly as when I've told people what I've studied at the time, I have had a number of confused responses. Here's an example. You study English, right? No, I study biochemistry. Oh, right. I thought you studied English. Example 2. What do you study? I study biochemistry. Oh dear. One more example. This was in a taxi, I should say. So the person in this context is a taxi driver. I'm not saying anything against taxi drivers. This is just idle chit chat in a taxi. Do you study at the university? Yeah, I study biochemistry. So you're into science, yeah? You could say that. You know the robots are taking over. This is a genuine example. Like all of them are genuine. I'm not making them up. So, according to Wikipedia, the definition of biochemistry is the study of chemical processes within and relating to living organisms. Now, looking at the word biochemistry, you could rightfully deduce that it covers the intersection of biology and chemistry. Or in other words, the chemistry and the interactions between molecules that kind of make biology happen. And as you can see from this image over here, you can kind of see the rough interlinking with biochemistry, genetics, and molecular biology. Although one thing I will say about this image is that, for at least from my learning of biochemistry and sort of related subjects, it is all kind of interlinked. And I think particularly in science these days, you'll be hard-pressed to find a lab that doesn't have an interdisciplinary approach. And labs within these fields will probably use techniques covering all three of these major groups. So here's some examples of the biological molecules that this field roughly covers. So what you've got on the right is a couple of examples. These are just some models I made when designing my first animation. But these are representations of proteins, which are a type of macro or big molecule that you find in biology. So some of these terms you might have heard of anyway, even if you're unfamiliar with the intricacies of biochemistry, such as proteins, nucleic acids, or you've probably heard of DNA and RNA being deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid, respectively, carbohydrates, and lipids. You might have heard it more in the terms of fats or fatty acids. And you may have obviously heard of other small molecules like water and certain metal ions. And when I talk about inorganic and organic, this has a much more discrete scientific definition, which means carbon containing, but this is something I can cover in a later video, alongside all of these aforementioned topics. So this is a very, very brief introduction into this idea of biochemistry abridged, and there's a lot of directions I could go with this particular set of presentations. So for example, I could cover each of those topics, as I mentioned on this last slide, in individual videos. And actually, each of these topics could probably be branched into other ones like enzymes and pathogenic organisms like bacteria and viruses, the wider cell, which gives it the context for all this stuff that's happening. There's a lot of places where this could go. So what I want to know is if people are genuinely interested in learning a bit more about biochemistry, Or maybe if you're studying a related subject and want some boost to help with it, to have some specific questions answered or just to have a recap. And if you're looking for more sort of animated content and some more in-depth explanations like my previous animations, do let me know. I appreciate that it's been a long time since I touched the animation side of things, and I should probably get a much clearer picture of where people would like this all to go in terms of biochemistry stuff, because I don't want to completely dismiss it, with all the other content I'm trying to make. I still want to keep that side of the channel on board. But I want to give it maybe some more direction because it's quite a big topic. And I want to start reasonably small just to bring as many people in as possible, and then we can hopefully expand it out if this series is of interest.